You're watching the Isaiah Factor Uncensored.
And welcome to the second half hour of The Factor Uncensored. Despite being at home more often than ever, 2020 was one of the most violent years on record. The FBI released new statistics today that show more than 21,000 homicides happened last year. That is up nearly 5,000 from 2019. How the hell could this have happened while most of the country was on lockdown? And most importantly, why? We talk about it with our panel tonight.
And our guests are here to talk about this skyrocketing murder rate across the country, an increase of by 30%, more than 30%, according to the FBI. Charles, are you shocked at these numbers? What?
I'm not shocked because it's something I talk about on the radio every day, and obviously in my practice as a lawyer that I am dealing with all the time. And it's both a national problem, but it's much more exacerbated locally and in the state of Texas. And we have to wonder why. I mean, there's one issue is that the pandemic has forced people into their homes. You've seen an increase in domestic violence. Also, there's a lot more confrontation going on in America. While we've seen some crimes actually reduce during COVID, murder has greatly increased. But we also have to have a more robust conversation in why America is trying to abolish or defund policing, like the city of Austin has done significantly, instead of fixing the paradigm of policing, right? Focusing more on victim crime and violent crime and moving away from prohibition and morality policing. And that's not a conversation America is having. Instead, the news media is largely having this naive conversation about this world without police, which just isn't going to work. And this murder rate is exemplifying that. But there is a lot of blame to go around. You know, obviously the murderers are mostly to blame. The backlog here locally caused by first the hurricane and now the pandemic has a lot of criminals on the street. But I do think that both the local district attorney and some of the district court judges are being blamed unfairly, whereas some of the judges, it's a very appropriate criticism. It's alarming.
Andy Kahn, let's hear from you at Crime Stoppers. You have been sounding this alarm, and you've been monitoring these numbers since last year.
Yeah, Isaiah, we're actually up to 142 people who've been murdered by defendants released on multiple felony bonds, felony PR bonds, and or bond forfeitures in Harris County. Of that 142, 103 since 2020. And the FBI reports, obviously, as Charles said, is extremely disturbing. The largest increase in homicide rates nationally since 1960. This is not something you want to have your Welcome to Houston, Texas Chamber of Commerce brochure. But, like Charlie, there's a lot of myriad of reasons. It's almost like the perfect storm has hit, not just in Houston, but all across the country, between COVID, between people that have lost their job, and people that are just frankly get angry quickly. Yeah. And when they get angry, they have more access to firearms than we've ever had before. So at Crime Stoppers, and I've been doing this now for 30 some odd years, I can't keep up. Yesterday at our National Day of Remembrance for homicide victims, that was our largest turnout we've ever had in 15 plus years. And that's pretty telling.
Usually you guys call out the names, but Andy, you said the list was so long, more than 500, you couldn't even call out the names this year.
Yeah, and that's, normally what we do every year, we read off the names every month for every month of the year with the names and the ages. We realistically knew we could not do that because we would take over an hour just to read off the names of over 500 people that were murdered in Houston and Harris County for the year. So we just screen rolled it from that perspective. So, the revolving door at the courthouse, yes, it's played a role. The backlog at the courthouse, yes, has played a role. And I think just a general desensitized society to violence with the burgeoning true crime movement, and people don't realize what victimization truly is. And as a board member of Parents of Murdered Children and Surviving Family Members of Homicide, I can unequivocally tell you that for many families whose cases are unsolved, that grief is intensified when justice is lacking. And right now, you've got thousands of cases that are unsolved that we desperately need help on, and we got to have more law enforcement in Houston to do that.
All right. Dr. Elizabeth Gilmore, what have you found in your studying of this issue at the University of Houston downtown?
Well, like the two gentlemen said earlier, this is not singular, okay? And it's going to take us, I think, quite some time to understand exactly what is driving all of this. I think that there is a plethora of factors. What we do know in terms of individual characteristics is that this problem is unique to the United States. And so when we look at other European countries, we're not seeing the same surge in homicide rates. And so if this is a uniquely American problem, right, even if we look to our neighbors to the north in Canada or to the south in Mexico, we're not seeing those similar surges. And so what is it that makes it unique in terms of America? And so it's really hard to point to a singular context. So when we talk about analyzing major cities, we're seeing upticks in all major cities in the US, inclusive of those where there was some defunding movements, as well as in cities where patrol relatively stayed the same. And so to kind of come up with a single answer, I don't think that that's a possibility, right? There are so many, different things. What we do know though, is that we're talking about members of our community, family members, people that are loved and missed. And we need to find out what is going on with these trends so that we can get answers for those family members, because loss of life is just, it's just devastating.
Absolutely. We want to thank you all for joining us here on The Factor Uncensored. Obviously, this is a problem we're not going to solve, but we can continue to talk about it. Thank you guys for joining us here on The Factor.